Okay, so we'll now begin, and I'm going to introduce, this is my friend and colleague. Okay. She started out working in public schools. You'll like this bio. She
Mhm.
started working out in public schools with high school students, and then in New York City. And then she discovered family and systemic constellation work, and she has trained and worked with that for many, many years. Um, she also non-school homeschools her own children, and she's also worked with in family and systemic constellation. There's a systemic education um, sort of started as an offshoot, but we all work together, and I've worked with her with them. And now she's developing something sort of unique for herself and others called sense thinking, which she's going to talk to us a bit about today and sort of demonstrate some things for us. Also, I'd like to also say she has contemplate. She's been practicing contemplative practices for many, many years. So she's a long time meditator. So I'm just going to pass it off to Atabe. Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm actually gonna begin. We can just begin by stilling a little bit of quieting. So I invite you to, you can close your eyes and just take a moment to contact your breath and the weight of your body. Wonderful. So as you land here and welcome yourself, and welcome each other on the call. I'll just introduce myself a little bit and what I'm going to talk about today. Is Ita Bay. And as Vishala said, I'm an educator, and I'm an educator who I'm the kind of person who it's like I was born to be a teacher. I've been teaching for since I was very young. I kind of teaching is something, it's just comes so natural to me. I enjoy it very much. Um, and uh, um, what am I going to say? So I spent a lot of time in education. I loved it very much. I thought that that was going to be the beginning and end. And then life happened. I had children, young children, took on maternity leave, and I found the process called family constellations, as Vishala mentioned. And when I discovered constellation work, which I won't describe a lot now, except to say that the experience of representing. So I was when you participate in a constellation, a person has a question about their family system, and you are asked to represent a member of that family. And you can start to feel in your body what it feels like to be, let's say, the mother in the context of that family system. Information that just arises spontaneously. And I was so fascinated by the way in which that information becomes available right away that my question as a teacher, as an educator became, well, how else can we use this in the classroom, in the context? Like, can I do the same thing for any question at all? Or does it have to only be family systems? And what I learned very quickly is that, yes, you can use this kind of process of working with your felt sense, working with your empathy, with your intuition for any question at all. And so today I am going to give you a little presentation, and we're going to do an exercise. The name of the presentation is called Your Feelings Make You Smarter. And you're going to have to let me know that you can see this okay. I'm going to present here. Let's see. You can see it? The slides? Okay, great. And I'm going to make this a little bit smaller here. All right, so hopefully not too much talking before we get to the exercise, but today we're going to talk about just, how do we pick up emotions from other people? And how do we know, what do we notice when we're feeling these emotions? And then I'm going to talk about how that self-awareness, when your empathy is turned on, how to use that in the context of the classroom. And specifically, we're going to look at working with it, using empathy with a children's story. Oh my gosh, I added a slide a little bit early. I'm going to skip these slides. I'll come back to them. All right. This is me when I was probably about, I don't know, how old do you think this is? 7 years old? Maybe 6 or 7? And when I was young, I started to notice that I could I could tell if a person was feeling sad inside, even if their face on the outside looked happy. And I would notice it especially with teachers, for example. Like the teacher would come in and the teacher would put on a smiley face, but you could tell there was something wrong, like they weren't quite right. And um, and it didn't occur to me, like it was such a normal thing. It didn't occur to me that I actually don't think it's unusual, but I didn't really think much about it. It just felt like just a natural experience to be able to sense how other people are feeling. And I'm curious for you, I might even stop the share. If you have noticed this in yourself, like, is this something you notice that you can pick up the emotions of either other people, or maybe you noticed it when you were a child, or maybe your own children notice it with you, or perhaps your students notice it? Times when yeah, when you can tell what another person is feeling, even if they're not communicating that to you.
Yeah, actually, I also think I feel it quite strongly. And actually, just yesterday I had a talk with Didi about it, and I was like last year I was researching quite a lot on this thing called high sensitivity, which is like a trait like every fifth person has, and that just means that emotions and everything is experienced stronger. And yeah, so I feel it resonates a lot with what you were just saying.
That's right. Good. Yeah, and I think that there are some of us who have that high sensitivity, but even for people who don't feel particularly sensitive, it's part of a range of sensitivity. And we can cultivate the capacity to notice. Yeah. Yulia, did you have something also?
Well, I didn't mean to say anything, but yeah, I can tell when people um have a face on, but they have, thoughts or feelings. Yeah.
Yeah.
In my
Sergio?
experience, yeah, in my experience, so I remember having more sensitivity maybe 15 years ago. So I don't know if this changes, as we grow up. But I do remember also that I was studying books about intuition. Maybe I was more receptive to that or aware. So, but yes, I, I, I do remember that.
That's great.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Well,
when I was little, there was a period where my mom had, I mean, later, I think she realized it was depression, but a lot of like holding in a lot of anger, you know? And so I became really sensitive to when I feel people are angry, to thinking, did I do something wrong? Is it my fault? You know, this kind of from that age when you're a little kid and when you kind of think like, oh, it must be something I did. But even then I had an awareness that it wasn't. And I would say to her, you know, you shouldn't blame me for your problems or something like this. And I was quite young, so I don't know where that awareness came from.
Yeah.
But yeah, always being around children in particular. From a young age, I was a babysitter and could tune in really easily to kids and to connecting with them. Littler kids than me. Not so good at connecting to my peers at that time, but was really good with littler kids or with adults.
Well, I really appreciate, you know, you're part of what both you and Sergio are pointing to is like there are these, you know, this range, even in the course of our own experience, where we feel more open, it's more clear, and then times when it feels much more dampened or fuzzy and unclear. And certainly my own experience has been that my relationship with my mother as a child is part of what honed that sensitivity, because I was so sensitive to her emotional experience that it kind of started translating with teachers who are like mothers, right? That's part of what, you know, like a kind of protection in the classroom, especially for children when they're very young. And so it's something to keep in mind that your students, your children and students, but your students and children are certainly, even if not consciously, we're reading each other in that way. You know, it's a much bigger conversation to talk about exactly how to respond to all of that. But it's in the context of this conversation, what I want to offer to you is that this is information that has value in learning. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. Let me go back to my slideshow. Okay. Oh, yeah. So in constellation work, in even in at this a kind of let's say, what do I want to talk about? I'm sorry, I'm getting a little tongue-tied. The field. It's almost as if, right? When I was a child feeling another person, it's almost as if I could feel like a wave of energy and energy and information coming from the other people. And certainly they could probably feel that coming from me. This is it's a normal part of who we are, that we have all of this information about us that's actually present in this field. And again, the field is another huge and very interesting topic, but you can think of it as as all of the information about you and about me that's actually present in not visible, but it is detectable and there are times when it's more detectable than others. And my sense when it comes to empathy is that there's a kind of, most people might have a kind of baseline, their whatever their normal is. And then one day you might notice that they're feeling particularly sad or particularly excited because something has changed off of their baseline. And now you notice a difference. Okay. Now, when I'm with another person, and this is probably the same for you, how can I tell? How does this empathy thing work? Well, I notice first, of course, you can see that there are clues in the person. You can see, you might hear it in their voice, you might see it in their body language. You might perceive it in something about their energy levels. You can see it in their eyes, for example. So there are things you can pick up with your outer senses, meaning your sight, sound, taste, touch, smell. You can pick up that information. But then there's also the inner senses, how you feel emotionally when you're with them. Like if you might notice for some reason you suddenly feel a little bit heavy and sad, or your energy feels low, or maybe your energy feels excited, you feel open. You might also notice that there are people without, again, this is not conscious, but you might notice there are people who you're just drawn to. You want to be close to them. And others you feel more reserved. And finally, you might notice that there are times when you feel open and relaxed with certain people, and not just people, perhaps in certain environments, and other times when you feel more closed and tight. So these are all cues of your felt sense that are, we often think, oh, it's just me. These are just my feelings. But what I want to suggest to you is that that's information that you're feeling in your inner senses, in your empathy, with your empathy. So feelings that you're feeling inside of you, that's a mirror to what's outside of you in some way. And as I said, we can learn to use this information in the learning context. Okay. I'm going to pause for a second again and just see if there's any, can you see me while this screen is up? You can. Okay, good. I can see you too. I just opened the, galleries. So if you have comments or questions, you're welcome to offer them now.
So what you're saying, maybe not every case, but how you feel in a moment when you, I don't know, arrive to a location with people, what you feel inside, it's a mirror of what the others are feeling.
I believe it's often, you could even say so it can be, I guess that's the best answer. It can be a mirror of what other people are feeling.
Mm.
And I'm noticing I'm pausing just because it's the potential of this conversation is very big. So yes, I believe it certainly absolutely can be. I know without a doubt that it can be. And not always. Like sometimes it's really just us. But I would say, but even inside of my own feelings, whatever I'm personally feeling, it's all just by itself. My inner feelings are the result of many things, as you know, right? The things I'm thinking about, the things I'm experiencing in the current moment. It's just a kind of multiple fields of information I'm sensing in my body. And so one way to think about your emotions, your empathy, is to think of them a lot like thoughts. Like if you sit and let's say you meditate on an object like your breath, and you notice, oh, I want to keep attending to the breath, but my mind is busy, right? At some point, you'll discover that your thoughts are not really your thoughts. They're just information that's kind of moving through you. They might be specific to your life experiences or things you've been picking up around you, but you don't hold on to them. They're not personal to you. Information. It's the same thing with emotions. Our emotions come and go, they arise, but we think of themselves as ours and us. But in this kind of practice, you can start to imagine and understand your emotional experience just like you understand the flow of the river or the flow of your thoughts, information that's moving through your body. And when you take that orientation, then you can start to use your body as a tool, as a mechanism for making sense of the world around you. And we're gonna dive into this in a very simple, kind of fun way. Any other questions before we move on, or comments or arguments? Okay. I'm going to read your story. You don't have to do anything in the beginning. We're just going to listen to the story. You might know this story. This is a classic Frog and Toad, our friends. Maybe you've read it to your own children. I'm going to read it to you right now. Okay, Frog and Toad are friends. This is the last section in this particular book. Frog and Toad are friends by Arnold Lobel. The letter. Toad was sitting on his front porch. Frog came along and said, "What's the matter, Toad? You're looking sad." "Yes," said Toad. "This is my sad time of day. It is the time when I wait for the mail to come. It always makes me very unhappy." "Why is that?" asked Frog. "Because I never get any mail," said Toad. "Not ever?" asked Frog. "No, never. No one has ever sent me a letter. Every day my mailbox is empty. That is why waiting for the mail is a sad time for me." Frog and Toad sat on the porch feeling sad together. Then Frog said, "I have to go home now, Toad. There is something that I must do." And Frog hurried home. Okay. Now, we've read the story, you've taken it in, perhaps you've read the story many times before, so you may know the story well, and maybe for some of you it's the first time. Now, just what we're going to do is we're going to play with this idea that I can use my sensing, my empathy, my feelings to enrich our experience of this story. Okay? And we're going to do this by doing this kind of fun exercise. You'll need a paper. So I've got paper here. Can you see there's I might have to pin this one, pin spotlight for everyone. If I spotlight it, it might take over. So I'm not going to spotlight it just yet. But you're going to need your own paper and pen. So if you could take a minute and find a piece of paper and something to write with. Because you'll want to do this exercise. It will make it more, it will make more sense for you when we do the exercise. Whoops, how do I go backwards? Okay. Good. So what's going to happen is I'm going to read the story one more time. And this time I want you to listen for, we're going to do step one here. We're going to listen for the characters in the story. And you're going to listen for what elements in this particular scene are important to you. Doesn't have to be important to anybody else, just things that you notice. And we're going to make a little drawing of it. So I'm going to read the story, and then I'm going to spotlight my little, my thing so you can see what I'm doing. But I don't want you to copy me. I just want you to get a sense of of how to do the process. Okay, so listen again to the story. And as you listen, you can take note of what's important. You can write it in the side of your paper. Okay, Toad was sitting on his front porch. Frog came along and said, "What is the matter, Toad? You're looking sad." "Yes," said Toad, "this is my sad time of day. It is the time when I wait for the mail to come. It always makes me very unhappy." "Why is that?" asked Frog. "Because I never get any mail," said Toad. "Not ever?" asked Frog. "No, never," said Toad. "No one has ever sent me a letter. Every day my mailbox is empty. That is why waiting for the mail is a sad time for me." Frog and Toad sat on the porch feeling sad together. Then Frog said, "I have to go home now, Toad. There is something I must do." And Frog hurried home. Okay.
Hello, buenos días.
Okay, good. So can you see the screen with the paper and pen?
Mm-hmm.
You can. Do I need to stop the share or is it too small? I don't know if it's big or small.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So the first step of our exercise is just to make a drawing. So to think about what are the elements in the story that you noticed, and make a drawing and put them in your drawing like a map, like however you think that.
So like on kapak, so namen sa lesbina.
Dee Dee, you need to mute. Dee Dee David Priya.
I got it. I muted.
Okay.
Okay, so let's see. I remember, for example, there's Frog and Toad. And it's funny because it occurs to me, I get confused over who's who, but I think Frog is Toad is the sad one, right? Well, one of them is definitely sad. So this is my picture of frogs. Obviously, these don't have to be good pictures. This one's sad. And there's mail. Oh no, there's an empty mailbox. It's empty. There's nothing in it. Um, and then there's the friend who's listening. Oops, sorry, this is supposed to be the eyes. This is the friend who's listening. And this is the friend who's sad. So that's what's in my drawing. You can make your own drawing. What do you notice in this story? Okay. I'm just going to show you the next step. You can continue to draw if you're still making your picture. So we're creating a diagram, and now we're going to, just like we talk about when we're feeling empathy. So when I spoke about as a child, noticing the feelings of another person, I am going to imagine that I can enter into each of these. I put three things in my drawing. The sad the sad friend, the listening friend, and the empty mailbox. And I'm going to take a moment to imagine that I can come right into this picture and then just let myself notice what it's like to feel the different parts of my drawing. And when I do that, I'm going to notice what I feel physically, what I feel energetically. I'm going to notice how close or far away I want to be. I'm going to notice if I feel open and relaxed or tight and constricted or anything else I notice. So I'm going to invite you to take a moment to do that with your drawing, and I'm going to do that with mine. And I'm going to take some notes on mine. Okay, so I just went to one character. For me, I'm going to go to the other character. Mm. And now for me, my third element isn't a person, it's a mailbox. So I want you to trust that even though you're not dealing with people, or in this case, frogs and toads, you're dealing with an element of the story. If you had that in your picture, you can, in the same way, just play with this idea that if I pretend that I'm the mailbox, I might also get this information in my body and felt sense. Hmm. Hmm. Okay. So, give me a little indication if you would like a little bit more time, or if you feel done, you can give me a thumbs up. All right. Good. Great. So, this is where we get to talk about what we noticed. And I don't want to go first. Um, if you drew a picture, I'd invite you to show us your picture and then maybe talk about, did everyone like kind of pretend, like go into their picture and pretend to be the different parts of the picture and sort of feel into that? Okay, good. So, um, if you've done that, let's see your picture and tell us what you noticed. If you want to, we'd love to hear.
Okay, I can share.
Sergio, I think, is sharing too.
Oh, okay, wonderful. Yes.
Oh, good. I can remove this one too. Sergio, do you want to talk about what's in your picture?
Yeah, so I draw the frog, well, the sad and the happy frog,
Yeah,
well, the toad and the frog.
yeah.
And then I wrote the frog um, at home writing a letter and thinking about sending a letter to the toad. And then I uh, painted the toad happy receiving a letter and finding the mailbox full.
Uh-huh.
And down here I wrote an empty and a full mailbox,
Hmm.
and just I used words to describe how the mailbox felt, or each character felt. So the empty mailbox, empty, dusty, rusty, lonely, out of the system. And if the mailbox is useful, full, clean, considered member of the community. And I thought about assumption and empathy as keywords at the beginning, and, and maybe some anxiety of the frog to go home and start writing the letter as soon as
Mhm.
possible. Yeah.
Mhm. Mhm. Did you know the story? Like, you know
No,
that? No? Oh, so you're anticipating what's about to happen.
yes, it's my intuition.
You know, one of the things since we're here with this, it's such a good example. One of the things that happen when you do this kind of exercise, you can just take one part of a story, and we do start to have these intuitions about what may or might happen next, may or may not happen next, and it's fun to see how to start. It's part of especially if we're doing it with older children, we can start to talk about, well, what do you think might happen next in the story, given how you understand what's happening in this scene, for example. Thank you. Okay, who else? Yulia, did you have something, or I wasn't sure.
Yeah, I do. Here's my, let's see, I'm gonna try to.
No, yeah, it's getting fuzzy. The
Oh my goodness.
the Zoom is it's like wants to
Mm,
block it.
Maybe we can try to disable the blurry background. I don't know if that's easy.
I don't know how to do that. Mukta, do you want to go now and do you want to go before I do, and then I'll try to disable my background? I'll figure
Okay.
out. Okay.
All right. Yeah.
Oh.
Okay, so this is the moment where they feel sad together. Or at least in the beginning, they both had sad faces, but then I kind of changed this frog to have a neutral face and then a smiling face. It was a bit unclear because this frog, yeah, has this idea to go home and write a letter. I had the same idea.
Mhm.
And well, when I kind of focused on the sad frog, I felt I don't know, I had mixed feelings. Like I didn't want to be so close to the sad frog because it was sad. But in the end, it also felt kind of just calming because it kind of allowed me to feel some sadness and not to hide it. Um, and I was happy to feel into the happy frog, or kind of like, yeah, feeling that he has some, I don't know, it felt quite trickful, or like in a nice way, kind of like he's also feeling sad, but in his mind he's already thinking what to do. And then I was feeling into the light bulb, and that was just really nice, really, really opening, really, really beautiful feeling to feel into a light bulb. Yeah.
Wonderful. And again, I'm going to use what you shared as a kind of example for how to work with this. One of the things that's so rich about this, and Mukti, you shared it when you spoke about, oh yeah, what is it like for me to sit with the sad frog, and what does it bring up in me, and what is it like for me, my experience to sit with the happy frog or toad or however it goes, toad frog. Um, and then also to think about your children, right? Our children and students, how they are also, maybe what are they wanting to avoid, and what are they wanting to be next to, and how might that be showing up? And how could this be a useful tool for us to talk about our feelings? And maybe also a useful tool for us to learn about like the experience you had of going from an initial feeling of discomfort, but then you sit with it and it becomes okay. It becomes kind of peaceful. So in just this tiny little, children's story, and working with the sensing of our own sensing, just so many teachings become possible in this. And I especially like for me, like I listen to what you shared and I take away oh, what would that be like to help children learn to take a moment to sit with their discomfort until it becomes peace? What an interesting idea, right? The possibility that I can sit with my discomfort and it can open into peace.
Right.
Yeah, thank you. Yulia, did you get your, yeah.
I did. So let's see if it works. Here's my drawing, and you see an unhappy toad and a so-so frog. So the unhappy one is saying a lot of negative things. It says never, ever, what else is he saying? Always, never, no one, and empty. And that made me feel heavy and pacing and restless. The object I chose was the stairs. They were sitting on a porch, and I felt like it was the stairs were choosing, are they supporting him or are they stagnating him? So are they supporting the sadness and comforting where they actually should let a sad person or sad frog get up and do something about it? And here's a frog, actually not a toad, a frog who was neutral, and he sat with the sad toad, and he felt he was compassionate. When I thought about him, my gut was hurting and I felt irritated, and actually my shoulders hurt. And I felt like he had to go. He didn't want to just sit. He wanted to get out of these stairs. He needed to take an action. So he left.
Wonderful.
I assume that he wanted to help him. I also assume that he'll write a letter, but I think that their characters are different, where one is passive and just waiting, the other one is proactive and willing to do something about this unhappiness. So I felt like he had to go, he had to leave and make a change.
That's great. Thank you. And I really am appreciating how we each have different experiences of the characters. For me, this is one of the most valuable parts of this practice, because when we're oftentimes when we're teaching, and maybe you've experienced this when you were a student, when you're being taught literature of any kind, there's a kind of expectation that we will all come to the same ideas about what we're reading. And instead, what we're experiencing is that each person interacts with it and gets very unique and original information from these same words. And that's part of the gift of like having many people learning together. Like there's so much information, a whole world of experiences and emotions and different ways to respond, to the sadness or to the energy, to the stagnation or the movement. So thank you so much. I really appreciate hearing. Valentina, do you have a question?
No, it's not a question. I want also to comment, but I'm on my way home, so I draw in my mind. I do in my mind. So yes, it's about two frogs and about the mailbox, and it's also the mailbox like old and dusty, and nobody opened it for a long time. So, and what feelings came up for me? This is more about the other frog, like happy frog, how you call it. So it's shame. I mean, this feeling when you are like forgot about the birthday of his friend or of your friends, you forgot to write the letter to send greetings and everything, and that's like came up in me, and I don't know. I mean, I know the story and the end of the story, but exactly in this piece of story, what you read for us, I felt like uncomfortable for that happy frog, So this was I mean, like you forgot about your friend, forgot to send a wish or to greet him or something. So that's my feelings. Thank you.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you. I mean, I can relate to each of these experiences, each of these versions of Frog and Toad's experience. Anyone else have a share? Or a question?
I can try slow.
Hi.
For me, yeah, namaskar. I try to switch the camera. So now, okay. So I realized that I have difficult to understand others. And really, when I put me in place of others, it's very hard. So when I imagine about the solitude, that the frog was feeling, I immediately felt that no sense, just my desire is action, like he should not it should not be frustrated, like the thing what came in my mind, I know this story, I know this book is very nice. I thought he could even use the mailbox to make a house for birds. He'll not feel lonely, So that's my feeling. I tend to think people should think like me. Then I felt the expectation of the frog, and then the support of the friend, and then the frustration of the frog. And I think, but because the friend there is supporting, why he has to be even frustrated, So he should be happy when he has the friend by his side. So it came in my mind, the contentment. Sorry. And that's it. That then I thought, yes, there will be a lot of exchange, but I realized it's very difficult for me to understand others. Like it's really hard. Even as a child, I didn't have that sense that the people are talking here. If I smile until now, if I smile, I'm smiling, But if people sick, I can recognize immediately to look in the eye. But inside, it's very hard for me, really. But children is different because they don't, at least the children I have here, they don't hide emotions. So it's very easy. Oh, this is jealous. Oh, this is, is feeling need to be a little bit pampered. For children, it's very easy, but for adults, I think I don't have patience.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Lydia.
Okay, so I mean, a lot is repetitive of what other people have already said. I guess one thing that I felt with the toad is a sort of hopelessness, he's anticipating disappointment. He already feels the disappointment even before it's happened, he's already suffering. And the frog, I feel he's touched by this sadness. And I just felt like I relate to that feeling of excitement of, wait a minute, I've got something I can do to make this better, that kind of feeling of, and it gives the kind of feeling of excitement, like, oh, I've got something to do important. Because, to be able to give joy to somebody is really a big pleasure. It's seva in us. So yeah, I related to that feeling of like excitement and how could I really bring a smile, sort of fix the situation. And mailbox, lonely, empty. Why does everybody else get utilized but not me? Wanting to be useful. It's not getting a chance also for its purpose to be expressed. It occurred to me that if Toad wants mail, he should write some mail. If he wants to get mail, he should write mail instead of just sitting there and being sad. Like he should put letters in the mailbox that the postman will pick up and bring to other people. Then the mailbox wouldn't be empty. Nobody, I mean, at least in the States, when you want the post, if you want to send something, you don't have to go to the post office. You can put it in your mailbox and put the flag up, and then the post person will come and pick it up. So yeah, sometimes that kind of self-defeatingness of the depressive personality, you know, can also bring up a bit of frustration in me. Like, why are you torturing yourself? You know, come on, you don't have to do that. So yeah, also aware that sometimes I have that reaction when I feel there's too much self-pity.
This has been wonderful. I really appreciate what you've all shared. And one of the things I wanted to point you to, which I suspect, I wonder if you have this experience, which is that you're in understanding, the way you understand the text, especially now that you've made these drawings and felt all the different parts, it feels real to you, right? It's very real. It's very like, you know, you won't forget it. You won't quickly forget it, right? Whereas a lot of times when you learn something in school, it's very quick. You know, you kind of like have to try to remember and cram it back into your brain, you know, if you're going to be tested or asked about it. But here we have such a personal, direct experience of working with even this simple children's text. Some things I want to say is that now working in this way is so, for example, if you wanted to read a text and have a child draw a picture, they're going to have a different experience, obviously, than we had. And children, when they're young, they can't do what we did. In other words, I went and I looked at my drawing and I said, oh, I'm going to be the sad frog and I'm going to feel the feelings. And these are feelings associated with the sad toad. And that ability to create a little separation and have a kind of meta awareness, right? A kind of you're operating from a perspective where you can create you can see a big picture, a map. You can separate out into parts of the map. Children can do that. Children can and will do that, but they won't say they won't separate themselves from the experience. They're just going to be if you gave them a toy, for example, one of the ways to play with this if you're working with children is you can give them toys and objects to represent the different parts, and they can tell you the story that way, or they can just draw a picture as you're telling the story, and you might notice they arrange things, they focus on different things in the story when they listen. But don't expect, for example, a child to be able to do exactly what we did. This is a different experience that we've had. But the intention of our experience is to help us recognize how much information is available just beneath the surface of these words. And the other thing you may have noticed, because we each have very different versions, well, some similar stories, but also some distinct experiences and distinct things that make us comfortable and uncomfortable, that's also a mirror, that's a reflection, that's us, right? And it's a reminder that that's true of everything you read. It's always a relationship. The words are always a relationship between you as a reader and the text and whatever the text represents. They're never just one thing that the text represents that's separate from the reader. Okay, I'm going to pause there, see if there's anything else. And also, Vishal, if there's anything that you have or want to point to or ask.
I think that was an excellent point that you just did. Two things that I'm hearing that you're saying that I wanted to sort of repeat. One is that when you use methods like this, whether you're using puppets or you're using toys with really little ones, or you're having them draw it, even if it's hard for the, 3, 4, and 5-year-olds to be representational, it might just be like a circle and that's what it is, or a scribble and that's what it is. Just this idea that they're all experiencing something different and it's all valuable. Like there was even a little bit in the chat around one of our, members talking, Yulia, you should look in the chat because Valentina said something to you. So it's like that there are the different experiences, and if you have them connect to that, then it stays with them longer. So I think that, to me, that's very important in terms of any kind of learning. And so I don't know. I just wanted to say that again because I thought it was really important.
Yeah. Okay, I feel, there's some things, I have a few more slides. I could share them, but I actually feel that this might be enough for now. Like it's just a taste of the exercise, and we've had a very rich, rich process. How does that feel, Vishala, for you? Should I do my other slides or should I, close here? Yeah.
I'll go with whatever you think, but of course now I want to see what the slides are. So
Well, then let's do that. It's a little bit more talk, like it's a little bit kind of, but
Good talk, and then I'm going to give a break to everybody. So
all right. Okay, good. So, well, I'm going to go back to one of the pictures that the first picture, and just because I want to talk about, we can talk about it in the terms of text, in terms of story, book, words. This is true actually of all information, but we'll make it specific to text. So you can see here, there's a picture of finger pointing to the moon. And perhaps this notion that the finger pointing to the moon. Now, it's a way of saying the tool that we use is a pointer to try to get you to the experience. The tool is not the experience itself. So when the finger is pointing to the moon, the intention is for you to look at the moon. It's not for you to focus on the tool that I'm using to direct you over there. Now, I say that because when we read, we're not actually reading to understand the words. And we are reading to understand the experience that the words point to. And this is because words have no meaning on their own. They're empty. The words are only like symbols of something bigger. So let me see if I can find, I have some slides and you have to skip through these to get to the other slides. Here, this is kind of a funny picture, but what I'm trying to show here is that the book is just the top. You could say it's like the tip of the iceberg. It's just like the top, a kind of shallow crust, like the thin layer on top of a whole world of very rich experiences. So words take all of this very rich experience and collapse it into these symbols. And so when we read the symbols, what we really want to do is find ways to get closer and closer to the experience that the symbols represent. And that's what we've just done. So there are three properties of words. The first is that they are symbols of our experience. When we understand a word, what you're really understanding is the experience the words represent. Now, words are very useful. They're like a shorthand. I can say the word tree, or I can say the word rose, and you know what that is. But if I have you spend a moment with, let's say, the word rose, and you can drop into your experience of roses, and a whole bunch of information becomes available. Because you have the fragrance and the color and the texture, the way the petals feel when you touch them. You have the thorns. Maybe you have the sunshine or the rain. And maybe you have the occasion when a loved one gave you roses. So a word, that word rose, the real opportunity of that word, of any word, is not that you know the definition of it. It's that you know the experience of it. And this is why, for those of us when we're working with younger children, and really all human beings, but why we don't need to push children to learn to read. I mean, this is part of my philosophy, but I think it's important to at least consider that we don't need to push children to learn to read when they could be out playing and having experiences, because experience comes before the word. Words come later. Yeah. So here's another example. The child eating the apple. Eventually, yes, you can teach them A is for apple. But you want them to have a lot of experiences with apples before the word, the letter A and the symbol for apple has any meaning at all. Okay. Oh, what is this? Oh, I'm going to skip past all of this. So the second property of words is that they always imply relationships, either explicitly or implicitly, meaning they will, like in the Frog and Toad book, we know that we're talking about Frog and Toad and their relationship. And you have there's a mailbox. Well, what kind of mailbox, what kind of relationship is implied by mailbox? Well, it's implied, for example, mail and people sending letters and a postman delivering letters, and it stands outside of the place where someone lives. So there's all sorts of relationships. Every single word is in a web of relationships. I'm going to skip this slide. So anyways, I was going to continue with this for just a second. I think it's important, again, that we understand that we are never separate, and words, therefore, are never separate. And part of the meaning of the word and the richness of learning is in starting to feel the web of relationships that's described, implied by the words. Okay. Finally, property number 3, and we saw this today very clearly. Words interact uniquely with each reader. That's because, as we said before, the words are representative of experiences and relationships. And you are also a whole world of experiences and relationships. So when you interact with the words, you are having a unique experience. And it might even, if it sounds similar to what somebody else had, the reason you had your experience and the reason they had their experience can be very different. And this is why I say here, this is a feature, not a flaw. This is actually when we learn in the classroom as teachers to support a diverse ways of reading and interpreting information, that that students don't have to see what we see. They can see something unique, and I can actually learn from them something about that child and something about how they see the world and new information. That's a benefit that makes a thriving classroom. And this slide is just basically repeating what I said. Okay. Yeah, we often try to get readers to think alike about a text, but it is much richer when we become aware of the unique ways each reader interacts. Okay. Those are my last slides. That was good.
Thank Thank you so much, Atabe.
Mm.
Always a pleasure. I'd like you to put, are you going to, I don't know if you were going to share a few things that I can put in the resources for if people want more information about your work and what you're doing.
Sure, I have the book that I wrote about how I came to this work, and I'll share that with you. Yeah.
Okay, great, great.
Um,
And so anyways, thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Thank you, everyone. Namaskar.
Namaskar.
And we're gonna take a 5-minute water in, water out break. So that means please be back at 15 after the hour, whatever the hour is that you're with. And I will have a few more things before the end of class. Okay, well, we're gonna come back. Our little break is over. So I'm inviting everyone to come back in. And I would like it, if it's possible, if you could put if everyone that's able to, if they could put their video on for just a minute, and then we'll, if the internet band is difficult for you, then I understand that. Hello, everyone, just so I know we're all here, if it's possible. There we go. Greetings, everyone. Thank you. Thank you. So, so if we're back, I just want to say hi to everybody and say that today for the next part, the second half of the class, we are going to sort of try to finish up a bunch of what I didn't get to last week and really focus on two themes of belonging and exchange that we started last week and some practical things that we can do in the classroom. So we don't really have time to have everyone share. I always like to check in, and we didn't get to do that. So we can just check in by taking a look at each other for a minute. Nice. Yes. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So I'm going to just start with I know that we have one person here who has not been, this is the last time we're going to kind of look at this during this class, but I did put a link in it in Google Classroom, and this is our container for the social context of learning. And I know that there's one person here, Ashisha, who did not get a chance to join this. So I'm going to ask Scott to put the link in the chat again. And I'm going to ask her if she would just write her name on one of these two sticky notes on the side. And for all of us to kind of look at, and I'll repeat, what are we bringing into the class for our container for the class, and what do we need? So I'm just going to sort of read them as we're looking, and give Ashisha a chance to also, if you don't have, if you're not able to do the link in the chat and come in, then you can just write in the chat what you'd like me to put in, and we can do it that way. But I'm just going to read Didi Ananda Sanjaya, support, and also Together in Unity. Dada Janantananda, be present. Sergio, motivation to take action. Didi Devapriya, spiritual metaphors. Myself, Ashala, space. Mukti, compassion. Didi Ananda Gunamaya, family feeling. Sarika, be present. Also me, creativity. Vijayanti, respect. Didi Ananda Gunamaya, listening deeply. Mukti, allow vulnerability. Didi Gunamaya, understanding. Emma, see the whole. Didi David Priya, how to create teams and safety and group learning, and Yulia, deep listening. So also, if anybody else feels there's something else they want to add, they can. If not, let's just take a moment and everyone sort of take a look around the circle and see. And remember that we all are bringing this and wanting this that's here. Maybe just take a few deep breaths. So I'm going to put in for Aisha. She wants to bring in respect and learning. There we go. Is this a good place, Aisha, or is there another place you want it? Okay. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to stop there. And we're going to come in to today's work. Here, there we go. Okay. So we went over 4 different ideas about principles of bringing some of this work into the classroom of belonging, exchange, place, and time. And today we're going to talk a little bit about belonging and exchange and give you some very practical ideas about it. Also, you should know in week 3 in Google Classroom, I gave all of these examples. I have the creative briefs because that's part of our end of the class project. And there are several examples of all of these that you can look at. And if we have time at the end, I will just pull that up in Google Classroom so you can kind of see it for a bit. So, I want to go through this first. We did a little bit about what is it a good exchange, and we talked about actually what we were talking about is the exchanges amongst different systems in the school, because you have the children's system in the school, the teacher system in the school, the parent system in the school, and there's interactions between these different systems. And we talked about the exchange of parent and children and what might interrupt having a good exchange, in different events. But generally, a good exchange would be the parent giving to the child and the child taking. A parent to parent would be more of an equal exchange. Teacher to student, again, is teacher giving, student taking, even though that's not exactly even, it's more one way. The exchange is not always an equal exchange, and that's okay. Student to student exchanges should be more of a giving and taking in a very sort of equal way, and teacher to teacher. So I just wanted to point out there are these different systems in the school, and that these systems interact with each other. Teachers interact with teachers, students interact with students, teachers and parents in 2 weeks, we're going to have a presentation by someone that does parent circles in a school and how they do that. So, and that whole program is now being used in also, for example, in some projects around the world, like the one in Greece. They're using parent circles because they work with refugee mothers. But for today, we're really going to talk about children's circles. And the creative briefs kind of, in a lot of ways, a lot of them use this, this format. And it's a general format of a stilling meditation, a systemic exercise. Actually, Atabe used that with some stilling meditation and then a systemic exercise. And then she used us as adults drawing, which is sort of the extension, and then talking and sharing about the drawing. So she actually went through that process with you on an adult level. And so you can do that also on a child's level. And here's an example in the slide of when I created a story called Santosha Finds Her Place. And it had to do with some of the themes that children were going through in the school. Then we did this is with second graders, but we did a puppet show about it. And then what we did is that every page, every line I gave out with these are second graders, I gave them each a line and they worked with drawing a picture about it. And then we made actually an online book about it, and then they shared it with kindergarten students. So there's many ways that we can use this. But the format is use your talents. Some people, for example, Arun on Long Island sings before he meditates and he does some yoga. If your yoga is your strength, you might want to do some movement and then stilling, or singing and stilling, or storytelling after stilling. So it's good to use your talents, but this is sort of you'll see through all the creative briefs that there's, sort of the purpose or the question, and then but it comes out of that. You're creating a stilling meditation systemic or an exercise, and then art music extensions. And you see on the right here is we did something in the school called crew, which was sort of this morning circle. We call it crew because we're all pulling the oars together. And this was an exercise that they did in art class about everybody having a hand in it and then creating a beautiful hand that they can all see and displayed. So we all know that we're all together. And this is ways also to create a sense of belonging and building community in the school. So these are a whole bunch of exercises. I'm going to go through some of them, but I want to just stop for a minute and just see if people notice something, because I noticed this. There was one of the things that you will notice if you're in a classroom is what happens when you feel like someone's excluded or someone's left out or someone isn't there anymore. And I wanted to bring it up because it was happening during class today. Does anyone know what was happening? It just happened again. What's been happening in class today? Anybody have an idea about what happened in class? What's been happening throughout our class that might have to do with someone coming in and then leaving, or someone not being there, or we didn't have an exclusion thing, but something like that. Anybody have an idea what was happening? Did anyone notice?
Well, Valentina was in and out, and Emma came a little later, I think. Ashisha showed up later. That's what I noticed.
Okay.
Is it what you were talking about?
No, I noticed that both Paul and Didyananda Sanjana both tried to come in several times. Didi just tried to come in again. She had written me ahead saying she thought her internet was a big problem, but she was going to try. I think 3 or 4 times she tried to come in. So
that is really an internet problem, because I've been in communication with her over the weekend. There was a big fire where she's at. Yeah, she's having problems with internet.
She's having problems with her internet, she told me.
Yeah.
And she's trying and trying and trying and trying to come in. And she wasn't able. And I think that when you're in a classroom, if a child moves suddenly or something happens, this feeling of, you kind of want this feeling of whole and for everyone to be there and be together. And not everyone can, but you do notice it. Like I did notice that it sort of, I was like, oh, I hope she can make it in. And then she couldn't. I felt bad for her, because she kept on trying. So I just wanted to just say that this sense of belonging can actually be quite strong. And the sense of wanting to include can be actually quite strong. On the right here is something I'll show you. This is called a paper quilt, and it's an exercise that you can use where it can be up in the classroom. And the title of it is Our Community of Belonging. So I'll talk a little bit more about that. So what happens when students exclude themselves or others, or when they're excluded, not because they excluded themselves, they weren't able to make it. Someone's sick for 5 days in the school. What happens is that people notice it and they kind of want them to be there. I was just explaining my own sense of wanting them to be there. We want people to be there and to feel included. So I'm just going through a few things. My common quiet place we did in the last class, in the Inside Out class. And this exercise is a really good first thing about how to help kids find that calm place inside of them, how to start that process, how to make it really concrete for them. And so that is an exercise that I would always do first in classes when I was doing children's circles, because it really lays the foundation for, how to still, how to sit, how to breathe, a little bit of inside story, meditation, guided imagery, and it sort of gets them in the habit of doing it and understanding about it. And I want to just talk a minute about, and I think I did this last class, is that what happens when there's children that just cannot settle? What do you do with a child that's just can't settle? And one of the things I would do is I would ask the child to come sit with me, to be, especially if that child is in a situation where they feel they have to be in control because of that, the dynamic I was talking about before, where the child is kind of, because of difficult circumstances, forced more into an adult role. When they get in the classroom, a lot of times they want to always have control in the classroom and be in charge in the classroom. So sometimes I would ask that child to sit next to me and be what I call my second. So it establishes that I'm the teacher, but that I also establish that they can help in making it happen, making the stilling, making the quiet. And I find a lot of times with certain children that really help them settle down. Also, when you children's circle, there may be a child that's very hesitant to come into the circle, to sit in the circle, whether it's stand with older children or sit with chairs or sit on a rug. And I've seen teachers very skillfully allow the student to be part of it, but sit a little separately from. And the child was still included, even though being in proximity to other children, for whatever reason in their system, was very difficult for them. I just wanted to point those few things out. Also, we tried this in the last class, our circle of family support, or my circle of support. And, for example, if you're working in a class where you're working in a place where children aren't living with their families, you don't have to say family support. You can just say my circle of support. And I found that students, again, wanted to have it up in the room so they could have an anchor for that. They wanted to make another one that they wanted to put in their desk. I invited them to do another one they could have at home. It's very interesting, especially, for example, what Atabe was talking about. If you read a story about having a circle, or you give a little guided imagery and then they draw it, it's really, when they share it with each other, they don't always have to share it with the whole circle. They can share it with a partner or a friend. It really, you really get a lot of insight to what is support for them. And a lot of people have talked to me about, well, what about a kid that doesn't have a family or is traumatized? Most children, the younger ones, can come up with people that are support for them. And if you're noticing a child's really struggling with this, you can invite them that the support doesn't have to be within their family, or could just be in school or friends, or it could be an animal, or it could be something in nature. And you can include that in it also. Your circle of support can be your dog, or your, whatever supports you.
So maybe like a question like who's closest to you would be open-ended? How do you put it?
I say who helps you, who loves you, who's there for you, you can make whatever questions you want from it. You don't have to say, draw a picture of your family.
Right. So that's actually quite open-ended. I mean, they'll answer that how they feel.
Exactly.
Yeah. It leaves space for people, including those examples that you said, traumatized kids or whatever, that don't feel close to the mom or dad, to have a different constellation.
Right. But usually if kids are very little, unless they're in the situation like yours, Dee Dee, they do have, grandma might be their support, or uncle might be their support, they can identify. And even the students I worked with that were in foster care, that were, who's the person that supports you and cares for you. So, and you can also be sensitive and sit next, like I worked in a classroom where there's a child that was in the process of really being, they were not able to stay with their family and they were in foster care. I might sit next to them when they were doing it and say, oh, the social worker is really trying to help you with, caring and and who, and your stuffed animal, you bring everything with you, put that one, you need to have an awareness of the teacher of what students might have difficulty with this. But I was surprised that that was more the exception than the rule, more so than when you thought it would be. So these are sort of beginning things that you can do, and all these examples are there. So I want to talk about this for a little bit, because when we did a workshop with the teacher, you'll find that teachers can, will connect it literacy based. This was an extension of the book of The Ugly Duckling. So the teachers read the quote, "How you make other feels about themselves says a lot about you." And the students shared what the quote meant to them. And I asked them to place their hands on their heart and describe how the ugly duckling activity made them feel. They're experiencing feelings of sadness, guilt, and frustration. This is similar to the frog and toad story. So we asked students how they could make someone feel better about themselves, and they created small squares with words and symbols that show how to help someone be happy and feel good about themselves. And then we placed the squares together and called it the Polite and Kind quilt. And then this hung up in the classroom. This is a little bit older students. These are second, third graders. But you can do the same thing with pictures and friends and colors. And it was very powerful, big, powerful. It's just paper. Get a big piece of paper, you do these drawing squares, and then you place them, just glue them on the paper. But it's also using stories to do it with it. And this was the belonging quilt one, which here, this is a little bigger picture. And there's all kinds of books about belonging. And I tried a bunch of different books to see which one connected the most with children. And I asked them on one side to draw a picture about their belonging in school, and one, who helps them and makes them feel good at school, and the back end at home. So it gave them, you could do both or just one side. I gave them a choice. And they had all kinds of here. This is a picture of everyone in the class or everyone at home. This is my favorite, though, one at all, where this child wrote, "I belong everywhere." So I thought that's a very neo-humanistic square that they have. So these are all kinds of exercises that create a sense of community. But I want to talk a little bit about this yellow picture, this yellow quilt, because I invited the students one at a time. We did the stilling exercise, we read the book, they went back and drew the squares, called the squares, and then they came back and they placed them with a glue stick up on the quilt, and you get a sense of who's, and then you sit with the students in all of these, every single one of these quilt exercises. A really good question is, what do you notice? What do you notice? And students will come all different kinds of ideas about, oh, so-and-so's next to so-and-so, or, oh, all the pink squares are together and the greens are together, or all the trees are over here, or, oh, there's these spaces where there's nothing there, and how do people feel about that? Oh, so-and-so's absent, we'll have them do it tomorrow, or no, it's a certain shape, it's like a tree. There's all kinds of meaning, and we're going to practice this next week, or we're going to do something similar to this. And then again, one of the most important things about these creative briefs and these systemic exercises, what do you notice? And it gives not only the children information about each other, but gives the teacher a lot of information about the children also. Here's another thing that I did with, you kind of have to have older children, a little bit older, first and second, where it's called Secret Friend. What a good, and this, I mean, I think the Frog and Toad story would be really good for this. One thing's, what are some fun things you can do with your secret friends? And everyone picks out names and set a time for it. And then afterwards, you reveal the friend, and how did it feel to have someone do kind and positive things to you? And this was used in a classroom where there was a lot of conflict between kids in the classroom. And it was actually quite profound how the students really got into it and try not to tell each other and guessing who was or wasn't. But it gave a lot of specific, they did a lot of stuff ahead of time of what are some of the positive things you can do for a friend in the classroom. And it wasn't giving things to them. It was helping them. It was drawing a picture, these kinds of things. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about this exercise, spider web. I think we're going to do it in the last class. So, and I have a little things to show. The spider web activity is when you take, and I think some of you have done this, where you take a roll of yarn and you hold the end of the yarn. Someone starts, and then you unroll the yarn and you bring it to another person, and you say, what links me to you? What connects me to you? And it might be, I'm connected to you because we both like football. I'm connected to you because you listened to me when I was sad the other day. I'm connected to you because you helped me with something. I'm connected to you because we both feel really, it's different with kids and adults. And during, it's asking people to dig a little deeper, and you'll see as it goes, oh, so I have this yarn and I send it to you, and you have the yarn, then you hold a piece of it, and then you send it to the next person, and then they hold a piece of it, and till you go around to everybody, and everyone has a connection. And you can talk about, you might want to do it once, twice, but the idea is then everyone has a connection in it. And this is sort of an example of how you do it on Zoom. And I've done it on Zoom, and we'll try it on Zoom. But I'm going to show you just a little video of what you can do when you do it in person. And this is when I did a workshop in Taiwan. And I'm going to try to make it, I didn't realize I was not in slideshow here. Balance up, and then to the right, left, yeah, there we go. Okay. What if we go up a little bit? And let's go down. And then come up again. So we are all linked together. And everyone is part of us. 每一个人都彼此息息相连，然后而且重点是我们都是这个资源网里面很重要的一部分。And I think that just to close the day, you can maybe go around a circle and just say maybe one word or two. Oh.
Very hard to understand. You might not have shared the sound. It's very hard to follow the audio.
Oh.
When you share the video, make sure that you've clicked the share sound on the video so that we can hear it. Otherwise, we're hearing it
Okay.
difficultly.
Okay, you're right. I forgot to do that. I'm going to reshare again and see if you're absolutely right, Dee Dee. Thank you. Well, let's just try it one more time then. I don't know why I now lost. That was not supposed to. I have to get back up here. Well, there we are. Balance up, and then to the right, lateral. Yeah, there we go. I'm having some technical problems, so I am not going to continue because the video keeps on continuing. But I will say that when you can just even visually see that you can move it up and move it down and move it to the side, and it's a very tactile, kinetic experience with children to be able to, once they're all together and they do it all together, they can actually move it. And it gives them actually a physical sense that they're also all together and they all belong, rather than just saying it. And it takes some time, but I found it to be very powerful with and fun, you know, how they all link together and they like to sort of pass it and roll it and pass it and roll it. All right. I'm a little hesitant to try to share my screen again because I'm going to end up in this, I'll try it one more time, but I think I'm going to end up in this video loop that oh, good. All right. I don't want to be in a video loop that I can't get out of it. Okay. So I just want to remind that we have, I don't need to see this anymore. I just want to remind everybody that the Creative Brief assignment is in Google Classroom. And the reason why I gave so many examples is that you can look at them, you can adapt them, you can make your own. But for next week, I have 3 short little one-page reading about P.R. Sarkar's thoughts about teachers, students, and parents. And we're going to be using that for next week. So I just kind of want to end right now. We have some time left. What are some of the ways that you can think about that you might be able to use something like this, use a creative brief, or use with a group? How might you see using something like this with a group? Or what would you need in order to feel comfortable using this with a group? Because you can use them with adults or children. Any ideas on this?
Can you repeat the question? It's about the exercise or the reading?
How can you see any of the things I showed, the belonging quilts, or the family of support, or the secret friends, or the spider web? Can you see using this with a group? How might you use something like this? So Dada Janantananda said at teacher meetings he could see using like the spider web. What can you? Which one can you see using in a teacher meeting?
Okay.
The spider web can be used. The belonging one can be used. And I think we can do plenty of creativity in every meeting to work with the teachers to get them involved into the process.
Okay. So Go ahead. Yeah. Go ahead. Yes, Dee Dee.
Yeah, I mean, I actually have used many different versions of the web for many different purposes in different teacher trainings. I used it, I think Valentina was there and got inspired, and then she also used it in some work she did in kindergartens, but that was, I think, more ecological, to show ecological systems and to show what happens when one part of the system is weak, how it affects the entire, how everything is interconnected. But yeah, similarly, I also used it to point out just simply the group dynamics of a team, making the web and then having everybody close the eyes and then pulling on one part of the web or releasing one part of the web. And then again, so you could see how tension in the web is affecting not just the person who releases or pulls, but everyone. And then that led to a very interesting discussion about how that is a parallel to real life and how that's a parallel to when you're in a group and when you're in a team and how, so it was, it provides a good context for discussion and for that, like, what do you notice kind of thing, opening up people to have their own realizations from it. Yeah, but a lot with, anyway, anything that has to do with interconnectedness. The belonging one, I think, is intriguing to use. The quilt with adults or with kids, you're saying now?
I think the quilt you can
Or
use
both.
more with, I think you can use the quilt more with children. Next week, I'm going to show
That's my
things
feeling
like
too.
the hula hoop I've used with adults and a booty I've used with adults, and I'll share that next week. But yeah, I think that's better
Yeah,
for children.
yeah,
Yeah.
that I agree. Like, I could see maybe introducing that in the children's home. But the belonging one seems like you could do it also with a variety of people. Yeah, because you could also do that with adults, and you could also do that. Like, I would use it maybe in a session for self-awareness about what type of support do you have in your life. I could even see doing it with Dee Dee's.
Right.
Because I think that's a really sensitive issue for acharyas. I think a lot of acharyas don't have enough support systems around them. And it would be interesting to see, but it would be very, have to create the right kind of safe space for vulnerable sharing.
So I think that's a really good point, that you start with, like, my comment, if you're doing it in a classroom, you start with create the container, then you my calm and quiet place, then you talk about what kind of supports are available for people that have or not. You have to kind of build into it and know your audience. I think that's an excellent point, Dee Dee, in terms of what things you use in which situations. Absolutely. Valentina, are you there? I'd like to know how you use the spider web with and the ecological thing with kindergartners. Can you talk a little bit about that? She might not be there.
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
I'm here.
Yeah.
Yes. So you would like to know how I'm using in kindergarten?
Yeah.
So I'm working with 3 and 4 years old. So
But did you use something like the spider web thing that I showed? Did you try something like that? Dee Dee thought you did something about ecology with that. About when.
Or Brahmachakra, remember when you were working for the CARE project as a volunteer, you had been to Holland and you saw me using the spider web, and then you made a whole.
This web. Yes.
Yeah. You did like Web of Life or something. No, you had a whole session.
Yeah. It was very nice. So we and now also I'm using. So I was printed some photos and with different like animals, plants, and everything, and how and also some non-life items, and also like and with water, with sun, and how they are belong to each other. So how they connect to each other, and we used this net, so the thread, and we are like with this thread we connect each person who holding this picture, this printed picture, and it was very, very connected. And after we we hold this thread, this net, what we created, we can put balloons inside of in the middle and bring it up and down, and after we can let go one part of the thread, so the others can feel how the thread is not strong anymore. So how it is when we lose, for example, one animal or plant, how it's all like one system, one organism. So yeah, that's how I use this idea. Yeah.
And this is
And
part
actually, yes, after Didi, yes, but Didi did this with drawings. We drew, but I with the kids I used the printed versions, printed pictures,
right.
and they were like a big, so they can also like see the details and recognize them.
So this is a really great example about how you do something with adults, right? And it gives a sense, a feeling, opens up a creative, because I'm sure it was a nice feeling when you did that spiderweb thing with the adults. And then it gives a nice feeling, and then the teacher has that creative energy, and then they figure out how does it work. Oh, I'm going to use that, and I'm going to do it this way in with the group of kids that I have, and I'm going to use it to a theme of ecology. That is a fantastic example.
Yeah.
How you can take something and then adapt it and use it in a different environment. And that would be a great creative brief too for other people to, like it's just it's really a really amazing example of how you take something and you move it and you change it and you adapt it. I know in the last class, there was one of the teachers from the Copenhagen school worked with 1.5 and 2-year-olds. She's like, I have to do everything with movement. I can't, they're not, we have to just get on a boat and move together if we belong. And we have to clap and we have to, she said, there's no, I work with 2-year-olds, it's different. But she adapted it. She adapted some of these ideas in her own field. And then Donna is working mostly with adults. So I'm sure his Dada Ganantananda, so his idea is already thinking about how do I use this with other teachers? So it's really the audience you're being with. Maybe Sergio's thinking, oh, what might I take from this to use with my children at home? So it's, it's really the environment that you're in and how that works.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's better work with the adult people or with the kids much older. But I mean, you can do with the smallest ones. I mean, it depends how much they can sit, to have the patience to take turn after each and to discuss a bit. But you can also choose very, very like a little amount of the pictures and very simple pictures, very simple ecosystem, and you can discuss it's as you wish. I mean, it's yeah.
Yeah. It's knowing your children and knowing the environment and knowing. But I love the example of bringing in a Neohumanistic, like how everything's connected to each other in the world. It's just not us connected to each other, but everything is connected in the world. So it's wonderful.
Yes, with the ecological system, yes, it's very, very nice. I even was looking and searching how like who eat who or what eat and how it works. So it's very, very nice. Yeah. So
Thank
even
you.
all this food banned won't.
Right. Thank you. All right. We've come to the end of class today. Next week, we're going to do some more of this, but more breakout groups and, playing around with some different activities, hula hoop, Ubuntu. We're gonna do a few different things about how we how we experience place and time also with belonging exchange. If you have, this is my plug. I responded to everyone that handed in their journal. If you haven't yet, please do so. And next week, there is no homework due next week, except it will be really helpful because we are going to talk about P.R. Sarkar's ideas about teachers teacher system, parent system, children's system. So if you read that ahead of time, it will be helpful in the discussions in the breakout groups. Okay, everybody, have a wonderful week, and see you next time.